Što samo? Aha, nije ono da automatski vrči. Aha. Good morning, distinguished guests, Dean of the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture, University of Zagreb, who is co-chairing with me this session, Professor Zvonimir Guzović. Chair of Scientific Advisory Board, Dr. Šlaus. Distinguished members of the International Scientific Committee, Scientific Advisory Board, Programming Committee, Special Session Programming Committee, Poster Session Programming Committee, Award Committee, Keynotes and Panel Programming Committee, Special Issue Programming Committee, sponsors and partners, Special Session organizers, invited plenary lecturers, panelists, session chairs and co-chairs, session keynotes, members of the SDEWES Center, speakers and participants, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to welcome you in the name of the organizing committee to the 10th Conference on Sustainable Development of Energy, Water and Environment Systems. The conference this year is organized under patronage of Croatian President, Ms. Kolinda Grabar-Kitarović, Ministry of Environment and Nature Protection, and Croatian Commission of UNESCO. I would like to thank especially to those that helped this whole conference happen by giving financial support. Croatian Ministry of Science, Education and Sports, our gold corporate partner Sea Energy 2020, which is a network of national contact points for energy work program of Horizon 2020, Jilih Forschungszentrum, Kids InnoEnergy, our silver sponsors, RPC, Beast, and Adriacold, as well as many other sponsors. Thank you very much. I would also like to thank publishers and editors-in-chief of the journals that have already announced special issues like Elsevier's Energy, Applied Energy, Energy Conversion and Management, Renewable and Sustainable Energy Reviews, as well as Clean Technology and Environmental Policy, Waste Management and Research, Thermal Science, Management of Environmental Quality, Journal of Sustainable Development of Energy, Water and Environment Systems, and others which are still in negotiations. In this line, our role as scientists is to look for ways how to improve integration of various life-supporting systems. That's why we are here from these various fields: energy, transport, water, environment, and to increase the efficiency of the systems by using waste from one system as an input to the other system. We need to look the bigger picture and not just the small area of our specialization. We need to see the full picture. Before we start, I would like to invite the co-founder of the SDEWES conference, Professor Kemal Hanjalić, to give us insight into what made him decide to start this great conference series. Kemal, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues and friends, it gives me great pleasure and honor to begin this opening of the jubilary 10th Dubrovnik Conference on Sustainable Development of Energy, Water and Environmental Systems. This event was envisaged about 15 years ago and materialized in 2002 with the first conference under the name as it is known now, much more modest in terms of participation, but it was the first. It has grown and evolved beyond any expectation at an amazing pace, justifying fully the initiative and proving that the originators were on the right track. The raison d'être behind the topic of sustainability and the title chosen, highly actual already at that time and actually long before, has remained uncontested until the present day. Much has been said about sustainability, and saying anything in front of this distinguished and knowledgeable audience would sound superfluous. But let me quote just one wise thought. The future is not what it used to be, because we can no longer rely on the comforting assumption that it will resemble the past. Past abundance of fuel and water does not imply unending abundance. As Jörg Friedrich said once, infinite growth on a finite planet is simply not possible. And the third, the twin, or if you like, the triple challenge of energy and water shortage on one side and climate change still remains a challenge as ever. The SDEWES conference has certainly increased the awareness of the sustainability issues worldwide and contributed to in various ways towards its mitigation. And because it is jubilary 10th, it is appropriate, as Mr. Chairman announced, to say a few words on how it all began and why in Dubrovnik. First, Dubrovnik was not chosen by chance, nor because of its immense beauty. It has a long record in environmental regulations, and probably some of you know that as early as in the 16th century, it imposed the first ban on processing raw leather and burning oil within the city walls. It also has a long record of being a venue of gathering of various events, political, cultural, scientific, but what makes it connected to this conference also is that it served as a venue for a series of conferences organized over a few decades, starting as early as the 1960s, that was conducted by the International Center for Heat and Mass Transfer. How it came to that and what is it to do with the present conference? In the era of the Cold War, late 50s and beginning of 60s, two emerging technologies, nuclear energy and space exploration, triggered intensive research because there is confronted with insurmountable problem of how to manage huge amounts of heat. And the problem was frantically researched on both in the West, Americans, British and French on one side, and in Russia, but without much direct communication. Several visionaries in, at that time, Nuclear Institute in Vinča, close to Belgrade, came to an idea to bring these two parties to a neutral terrain, non-allied Yugoslavia, and being supported by a number of personalities from both sides, distinguished personalities from both sides, a center for International Center for Heat and Mass Transfer was founded, started with a series of conferences, summer school seminars, first in Herzegovina, and then moved to Dubrovnik. Tens of meetings have been held until the war in Balkan countries in 1990s. Interesting, the idea for this event was born among the functionaries of that global association, International Center, which was moved in 1992 to Ankara, to the Middle East Technical University. Its secretariat has been moved. It's an international association here. And after the war, I was participating in the executive committee and was asked on several occasions, hey, what is the situation in Croatia? How is Dubrovnik? Is there a chance that we revise some of those activities that we enjoy so much? And in late 1990s, I communicated with few people, Professor Orest Fabris first in Split, because I was in contact with him, and then Željko Bogdan in Zagreb. And we met in Dubrovnik, I think, precisely 15 years ago to discuss the idea, concept, title. We contacted Naim Afgan also, and the idea was born. The title crystallized, and that's how it started, with the first conference in 2002. We invited, at that time, young Neven Duić, Nikola Rozinski, Goran Krajačić, Marko Ban, all from Zagreb, Branko Iljas from Energetica Marketing in Zagreb, and then Avram Bar-Cohen from Minneapolis, Maria Grazia Carvalho from Lisbon, Gian Piero Celata from Rome, Professor R. Carter from Hamburg, Luis Serra from Zaragoza, and René Vidal from CEA Grenoble. As we all know, the event emerged into one of the most prominent and widely most recognized global gathering of scientists, engineers, and experts of varied profiles from all over the world, active in, on, or concerned with the destiny of our planet, especially of its major commodities, energy, water, and the environment. Ladies and gentlemen, I believe that I share all views, otherwise you wouldn't be here, that its success should be credited primarily to the enormous, dedicated, and enduring effort of the SDEWS chairman, Professor Neven Duić, his co-chairs, numerous active members of the organizing committee and the International Scientific Advisory Board, and last but not least, the staff of the SDEWS Conference Series and the Center, to whom I express my sincere congratulations and appreciation. I wish you all very fruitful and professionally benefiting and fulfilling meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Kemal, very much for reminding us how the things change in time. So maybe the time has come to morph into something else. It will, of course, depend on you, on the participants. When do you think we have to move to the next level? But we are still doing fine with our topic. But there are many changes that happened in the last 15 years. So we are trying to adopt to the new scientific ideas coming out. The conference was traditionally organized by University of Zagreb and Instituto Superior Tehnico. Since research groups at those two institutions developed the idea of Professor Hanjalić, Professor Bogdan, Professor Afgan to start the series of conference. Thus, I would like to ask Professor Zvonimir Guzović, the Dean of the Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture of University of Zagreb, to give his welcome address. Zvonko, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, friends, dear ladies and gentlemen,
It is my great pleasure and honor to welcome all of you to the 10th Conference on Sustainable Development of Energy, Water and Environment System in my name and behalf of Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture, University of Zagreb. The Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture on behalf of University of Zagreb is one of the conference organizers. I would like to convey all of you warm greetings and wishes for successful conference of the Rector of the University of Zagreb, Professor Tamir Boras. The University of Zagreb is the oldest and biggest university in Southeast Europe. Modern university is since October 1874. Now, university consists of 29 faculties and 3 academies. University has about 63,000 students and about 7,000 employees. Faculty of Mechanical Engineering and Naval Architecture, who is in behalf of University of Zagreb, is organizer of the conference, has about 400 employees and about 2,200 students. Faculty is founded in 1919. We have 3 studies. One is mechanical engineering, the second is naval architecture, and the third is aerospace engineering. The faculty consists from 40 chairs, has about 44 laboratories, and is located in 4 buildings. Dubrovnik is not only a tourist, but it is a city of education and science, and it will be a superb and stimulating setting for both scientific and the social aspect of the conference. Finally, I am sure that you will enjoy not only the technical presentation and the valuable scientific discussion, but also local hospitality, food, culture, and sightseeing. I sincerely hope that your stay in Dubrovnik will be one of the most memorable gatherings. I wish all of us a successful conference. Thank you very much for coming and for your attention.
Thank you, Zvonko, for your kind words. We are happy to be again for the 8th time here in Dubrovnik. 2 times we were outside of Dubrovnik, once in Ohrid in Macedonia, and last year the conference was organized on a cruise ship going between Venice to Istanbul and back. This beautiful historic city of Ragusa, as Kemal said, has a long history of rational thinking about its surroundings, about its environment, about its politics. And what has fascinated me always is how they managed to sustain their independence for 800 years. City was a country, independent republic, just a little small city, trading, living on the trade on the Silk Road from Eastern Asia to Europe, but managing to survive independently in the wild Balkans. This is an achievement. That's why we like to come here always, again and again. I would like to thank International Scientific Committee and Scientific Advisory Board that worked day and night to review the submitted abstracts, of which the conference received 1,202 from authors from 65 different countries. For those submissions deemed acceptable, authors were invited to submit a manuscript, and we have received approximately 600 full papers. The papers deemed to be of archival value were then reviewed, of which 241 were accepted as being candidates for further publishing in special issues in journals, for which I would especially like to thank Scientific Advisory Board made of 459 leading scientists. In the end, 587 submissions are expected to be presented at the conference. We are very happy with the fact that this 10th conference created such an interest among researchers making this conference. The first 4 conferences were having approximately 100-150 participants. The 5th one had 320, and the 6th had 420. 8 had 560 participants, while this one will have 530 participants. The participants are coming from all 6 inhabited continents, 65 countries, which is a record, 260 cities, and over 300 universities, institutes, agencies, and companies. While being a truly global conference, the 10th Dubrovnik conference has strong regional element also. Based on the presenting author institution, 388 participants of the 530 are from Europe, and 115 are from Southeast Europe, the region where we are now. I would especially like to thank all the members of the organizing committee who made this conference possible. In particular, Daniel, who tried to satisfy all your wild wishes about the program. This is really complicated when you try to fit in 500-600 different presentations. Goran, our man in Dubrovnik, who negotiated with the hotels and with all local services. Marko, our back office guy and IT guy. Nevena, who tirelessly worked on visa and financial issues. Tomislav, our staff whip. Other Tomislav, our nightlife organizer and matchmaker. This conference is famous for being, having a very good night scientific program all night long. I see that there are not many young people here, so that means that already last night there was some program. And all others who are now here with us and helping us that everything functions well. I would like to remind you of the strict policy of the conference that only those papers presented by registered authors at the conference will be deemed published. Also, the participation of the sessions will be limited to the registered participants wearing accreditations, as well as access to the conference excursion, gala dinner, and conference lunches will be limited to those in possession of tickets delivered to you at the registration. You can still register of those ones who didn't. The Best Papers Award will be proclaimed on Wednesday in the award session just after the invited talk. The Best Posters Award will be delivered on Friday. If you want to participate in the award contest and you're leaving before, which is not advised, but if you really have to leave before, then you need to name a representative who will, in the case that you receive the Best Poster Award, take the award instead of you on Friday. Please communicate that to the Poster Session Programming Committee. Our chair here, Peter. You have to inform him if you're not being able to be at the award session on Friday. The poster session will be just behind the corner, behind us. Also, we have managed to get a Tesla car, so some of you will be able to have a test ride. If you want to try your luck with 420 horsepower car, then please go to the registration desk and try to find a slot for a test ride. There will be only few. So first come, first served. Unfortunately, not enough place for everyone. Also, many of you have asked which is the Wi-Fi password. It's an open internet, and the password is Valamar. With this, I would like to proclaim the 10th conference open. SDEWES Center and conferences are supported and partnered by the World Academy of Art and Science. I would like to invite Honorary President of the Academy and Chair of Scientific Advisory Board, Professor Ivo Šlaus, to give an introductory talk, New Paradigm, the Role of SDEWES. Ivo, the floor is yours.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished participants, it is indeed a great honor to be here and to welcome you on behalf of the World Academy of Art and Science, which, of course, as Neven said, is the partner and has been a partner now for a few years. The title of few words that I intend to say is particularly this connection between the new paradigm, which we believe is necessary, and the SDEWES, the role of SDEWES. Salient features of the contemporary world are definitely globalization, interdependence, uncertainty, and very fast changing of this world. For most of us here at SDEWES, this looks a little bit strange because we would like really to emphasize much more that this world is a world where we are faced with very serious destruction of the natural capital. Of course, some 20 years ago, the so-called factor which measures how much of the Earth we are using was comfortably below 1. Now we are using almost 1.5 Earths. And if we continue with this kind of the destruction of the natural capital, very soon we would need 2 or 3 more Earths to satisfy our need, our pollution. And this, of course, is not that easy. The idea that we colonize the rest of the world, as we did colonize some roughly 100,000 years ago, the entire world when we left the East Africa, now this possibility is not that easy because colonizing the world is much more difficult than it was to go to Europe, to Asia, crossing the Bering Strait, colonize America, colonize Australia, and so on. So yes, that is a possibility, but not a very good one. So what we have to say is either we stop this kind of the destruction of the natural capital, or we are seriously imperiled. Yesterday, actually, our organizers have surprised us very well, very charmingly, with a performance. It was a touching event when one of the young ladies played the role of the Amazon. And then it had around its neck sold. Now, the idea of selling the natural property is totally unacceptable. And of course, we are facing this all the time with water, with energy, with everything, and that is not possible. So what do we have to really admit? We have to admit that the economy and the political structure we have now is really unacceptable and has to be changed. As a matter of fact, 2 years ago, Pope Francis, in his apostolic exhortations, wrote very clearly, "This economy kills." Now, it sounds just like almost a political slogan, but it isn't. Actually, as I speak, at every 6 seconds, one child dies because of hunger. It means that as I speak, in roughly 10-15 minutes, 1,000 children will die because of hunger. And that is responsibility of all of us, of me and of yourself, because we tolerate this kind of an economy which, of course, as it was said, kills. We could put this in other sort of numbers, and we can compare various disasters. For instance, the Second World War, with roughly the casualties of over 60 million. And the casualty, again, which came because of the hunger, because of the economy, which is not sustainable. In the last 20 years, from 1990 to 2013, 423 million people have died because of hunger. And if you put this in a number of years, this is twice as many as were killed during the Second World War. So there is an absolute imperative to change the economic system we have and to change, of course, the parallel political system that exists in the world. And of course, we should really be looking what are the causes of this. The cause of this is nothing that is deeply human, is not something that is rooted in evolution. As a matter of fact, is greed, and as many neuroscientists would argue, greed is something which is a result specifically of our economic conditions, not something which is inherent, like, for instance, curiosity is inherent, or like the famous golden rule, love thy neighbor, is actually evolutionary determined. To come back to the question of the fact that the salient feature of the contemporary world are globalization, interdependence, and the fast changing, we have to say that the cause of all of that, the generator of all of that, is science, science and technology. I emphasize science because nowadays actually all the technology comes from science. Until very recently, until 200 years ago, most of the technologies were ahead of science, and then science tried to explain this. But now essentially all of that is science-driven. As a matter of fact, science drives us now into what is called the singularity, the point where very likely we will be facing with machine that will be as intelligent as we are, with the synthetic biology that will be as advanced as it is possible. And of course, at the moment, we don't have laws, we don't have economic rules how to handle any of these questions. As a matter of fact, it is not even clear how we can compete with these machines, because obviously they will be having higher memory than what we have, they will be more reliable, and of course once we put them, they could work. As a matter of fact, the only way how we can compete with that is to use uniquely human characteristics which most likely machines would not be able to have, like empathy, like love, or if you want, back to the golden rule. When we look at SDEWES, one could ask what is the role of SDEWES in this preparing of the new paradigm. Obviously, as I say, science is the driving force behind that, and if science actually provides certain discoveries which could be dangerous, and just to remind you, from the various discoveries which turn out to be dangerous, you don't have to really look only on nuclear energy or on synthetic biology. You could go all the way back and look for the very first knife or the very first fire, which of course have not been really truly scientific discoveries, but rather the discoveries of human beings. And whenever we encounter any of these things, we have to realize that the only reply to that is to have more science. So there is no way to close this way of continuous increasing in the knowledge. And the series of conferences, which now last for 10 years, for 13 years as a matter of fact, but 10 conferences organized mainly here, but in other places as well, and very likely spreading now throughout several places in Europe and beyond Europe, with participants, as we have heard, of about more than 500 people from all 6 continents, obviously is a place where people are presenting their scientific results. And when you look at the acronym, then of course energy, water, environmental systems are typically the field of natural and technical sciences and life sciences. The word sustainable development almost goes into the social sciences because it is something that we have to do, and all of this. The other feature, of course, of these conferences is that we have overcome this distinction between applied and basic and fundamental, because to reply to a question on what is sustainable development is one of the most fundamental questions. So this distinction is very important to be overcome, and let me give you 2 historical examples. One research, this was entirely curiosity motivated, was the famous work of Röntgen. He absolutely had no intention of being useful in any way. And then, of course, as soon as he discovered the X-rays, these X-rays have been applied constantly. And I guess there is nobody here present who has not has some X-rays used in either teeth or anything else exposures. On the other hand, it was a typical, not even applied, but completely development task. And the development task was the task to make as noise-free antenna as it is possible. And as a work on this noise-free antenna developed, it turned out that what these 2 guys, Penzias and Wilson, who later on got the Nobel Prize also, just like Röntgen, who was the first recipient of Nobel Prize in physics, they discovered the signal of the creation of our universe. So as you see, this distinction between so-called curiosity-driven and applied research is absolutely something which is only a posteriori useful for political leaders and bureaucrats to see where to put certain things. And SDEWES, of course, in practice shows exactly that these things are being merged and very successfully merged. I believe 25 years ago, Alvin Toffler wrote a famous book called Power Shift, where he said that power shifted from violence to wealth to knowledge, where knowledge, of course, is a generic term involving creativity and so on. Knowledge is just not to spend too much time. This is you. This is the SDEWES conferences. Okay, so now this shift is occurring now. This shift is what is producing the new paradigm. This shift is what is actually bringing us to the singularity point where more and more of totally unexpected good results will be here. And of course, when we speak about the new paradigm, we really don't know what it is. And again, it's a task of you at conferences like here with knowledge, with research, to find out how this new paradigm has to be. We know that it has to really maintain what our world is. Interconnected, uncertain, we have to learn what these uncertainties are because it's totally unknown to us what they are. On the other hand, let me remind you that about 100 years ago, Heisenberg, of course, found out that all laws of physics, chemistry, and even biology are determined by the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Now, the only thing is that Heisenberg uncertainty principle, all physicists know how to use, all of you know how to use it, and of course the uncertainties covering the current world is not possible. The only thing we know is, as I said, there is an absolute need of changing the economic and political paradigm. And of course, sometimes it is said that, of course, we will be using not only the latest power, namely knowledge, we will be using also violence, of course, as we have seen. But as we use violence, we see that this doesn't bring us to a good solution. For instance, very recently, violence has been used in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Syria, in Libya. We see what is the outcome of that. Violence is never the solution. Wealth, you could say, okay, wealth is very important, except one should realize that one specific realization of wealth, and this is money, is something that to a large extent is virtual. The gross world GDP is of the order of 60 to 70 trillions. On the other hand, when you look how much we are exchanging, is about in a single day, in a speculation and so on, this is about 10 times more. And the real true wealth, really, is none of that, because it has been shown by a group of economists led from University of Cambridge, led by Sir Partha Dasgupta, that the real wealth are people. People are the real wealth. Education of people are the real wealth. And of course, when we come now, and this is one of the next panel we will have, is a question of the political leadership, which is of utmost importance, and Aristotle was quite right when he said that politics is a master science, because there you deal with numerous questionable issues and so on. And of course, sometimes we say that it's almost impossible to have good political leaders. But let me jump more than 2,000 years ago. There was a leader known to all of us, Alexander the Great. He was educated by the best philosopher in the world. Aristotle was his teacher. He continued being in connection with Aristotle all the time while he was trying to conquer the world. His aim was to conquer the world, and his father prepared him for that. And his father prepared for him the best machinery. At that time, the Macedonian army was the best equipped army, and he succeeded in overcoming a number of uncertainties. He did not know the enemy he will be facing, he did not know the conditions, but he was well prepared. So this should be one of the things that people who are now engaged in a political thing, and I think now is the time where not just one Alexander the Great, but all of us should be playing this role. All of us should really help in politically establishing the world that is freed of this large inequality, of this large unhappiness, of these situations that we have, the conditions which are destroying both the natural and the human capital, the only worthwhile thing we have on this earth, and it is the duty of us. And it is precisely these type of conferences that significantly contribute to this kind of the solutions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ivo, for very inspirational words. More and more we understand that the crucial battle of sustainability will be fought in cities. Since the integration of life supporting systems like energy, transport, water and environment is easiest there because everything is concentrated on a small area. So integrating different systems, it's much easierly done in cities. Dr. Şiir Kılkış from the Scientific and Technological Research Council of Turkey, TÜBİTAK, has been developing SDEWES INDEX for cities in which she tries to track how cities are doing the sustainability improvements. I would like to invite her to give us the insight into the index. Şiir, the floor is yours.
dear local organizing committee, dear distinguished guests of the SDEWES conferences, it's a great pleasure to share with you the SDEWES Index, benchmarking the performance of cities across energy, water, and environment systems. We have come a long ways towards integration. First, there was the dichotomy of disciplines, the two cultures with natural sciences and social science and humanities. Then the convergence of disciplines for inter- and multidisciplinary approaches, and an integrated approach, bringing to the foresight the use of multi-criteria approaches for complex systems and for sustainable development. And all of this can we integrate more and more towards a sustainable society. This is the reason the SDEWES conferences are so vital for bringing together all the elements that are necessary to bring us closer to sustainable development, including not only energy, but energy and water, energy, water, and environment. And all of this to embrace a more sustainable future. With this, we are faced with the challenge of sustainable development of energy, water, and environment systems to reduce the present pressures on the Earth system. And we need tools and approaches to bring cities, which are the largest user of natural resources, closer to sustainable development. So there was the need. How can cities learn from each other towards addressing the challenge of SDEWES? For this, the SDEWES Index was developed, and as you can see with the pictures, it tries to give a more complete picture of the challenge of bringing together energy, water, environment systems. The SDEWES Index provides a benchmarking tool for all the cities that it can be applied to. It consists of 7 dimensions and 35 indicators to determine the best practices. Let me start with just giving a brief overview of the dimensions of the SDEWES Index. The first dimension is energy consumption and climate, and here we try to look at the present status of energy usage in the cities, including energy usage in buildings, energy usage in transport, and the total amount of energy per capita. The data for most of these analyses come from the Sustainable Energy Action Plans that are prepared under signatory cities to the Covenant of Mayors. And also, it is important to try to adjust the energy usage to the climate. So we also look at the heating degree days and the cooling degree days in this index. Next, okay, we looked at the present status of the energy, but what are cities doing to be more efficient in terms of the energy and CO2 savings that they can make? So in this respect, we look at the measures including combined heat and power. It can be for the more quality use of the energy. Also, the measures for, is it improving the public transport systems based on the density of public transport or the networks, and also the public lighting measures. So with this, the second dimension looks into what cities are currently doing and what their plans are for the future to increase energy and CO2 saving measures. Renewable energy potential and utilization. This is the third dimension. Cities have solar energy potential, wind energy potential, geothermal energy potential, and it is important that these cities are using this potential and putting this potential into work to produce useful forms of energy, including electricity and also biofuels for transport, which must be made in a sustainable manner. Moving from the energy to the other dimensions and looking into the natural flows other than energy, water environmental quality is the fourth dimension. This is looking at the water consumption, domestic water consumption per capita, the water quality, the drinking water quality, air quality based on particulate matter, and also the ecological footprint and the biocapacity to put cities in the broader context with which they interact. The CO2 emissions and industrial profile looks into the CO2 emissions of the building sector, the transport sector, the CO2 emissions per unit of energy used, and also what are cities doing to reduce the CO2 emissions in the airports, which also service the cities. And what is the profile of energy-intense industries? City planning and social welfare is also important. What are cities doing to increase the public accessibility to transport? Urban planning to improve a better balance between compact urban form and protected and preserved green spaces and nature reserves. And what is the economic status of the city? But not only this, what is the well-being and what is the education rate in which the cities are currently in? It's a cross-cutting dimension. There is the dimension on research, development, innovation, and sustainability policy. This is important so that cities can integrate their CO2 emission reduction ambitions with research capacity, knowledge capacity, and in this, the SDEWES Index looks into the research and development policy orientation. Is there priority in energy environment? Is there patents in clean technologies? And other respected aspects, including CO2 emission reduction targets. With this, the aim of the SDEWES Index is to integrate energy, water, and environment systems. The SDEWES Index grew with the SDEWES conferences. First, it was presented in the first Southeast European conference cities, and for this, a collection of cities were prepared, including Ohrid, where the conference was hosted. And then for the ninth SDEWES conference for the Mediterranean port cities. And in this, as Professor Duić said, we took a scientific tour from Venice to Istanbul and back, and some of these cities are the cities in which the ship embarked. But with this, beyond the geographical focus for the conferences, for this, we also decided to integrate another sample looking to the people who make the SDEWES conference such a joy to attend. As a new addition to the sample, the cities with the most number of authors and co-authors from different institutions that also emphasize the cooperation element of the conferences were added to the sample. So now there's a sample with 58 cities, including Bogota from Latin America, and Incheon from Asia, and Washington, D.C. from North America, and the European cities as well. By dimension, I will just briefly go into the best practices. What are these cities doing? These cities are taking action to minimize energy usage in buildings and transport relative to population and climate. These cities are diffusing combined heat and power-based district heating and cooling networks, implementing pilot net zero energy building projects, connecting multiple modes of public transport. And here, at the end of each slide, we can see the top 15 cities. These cities are putting into use renewable energy potential and utilization to replace high exergy, high-quality energy resources and integrating more renewable energy into thermal energy networks. And these cities are increasing water quality and minimizing air pollution. In addition, these cities are reducing CO2 emissions relative to energy usage and minimizing energy-intense industry and airport CO2 emissions impact. And as well, they're taking action to implement compact urban form and protecting green corridors, increasing economic and social well-being. For R&D, innovation, and sustainability policy, they're strengthening the capacity and mobilizing the knowledge base for clean technology. And with this, the SDEWES Index tries to benchmark cities across energy, water, and environment systems. Here we can see the results for the top 15 cities. In the top 5, we have the conference venue of Dubrovnik. So it is in the top 5 cities with a well-rounded approach in the SDEWES Index. And moving to the top 10 cities, we have Valencia from Spain, Zagreb, Ohrid, Barcelona, Karşıyaka from Turkey. And continuing the top 15 cities, we have Malaga from Spain, Seferihisar from Turkey, Bucharest, Bari, and Sevilla. And this is the complete results for the 2015 SDEWES Index. I hope that you're able to see some of the cities from which you're coming. This is representing the results and the profile as much as possible of the SDEWES community. We call our world the spaceship Earth because we're all scientists, citizens, thinkers, artists living in one planet. And the SDEWES Index tries to bring the cities closer to taking action to improve their energy profile, their water profile, their environmental profile, their CO2 emissions profile, their city planning profile, and the research capacity which they put into action to improve all of this to reach their ambitious targets. With this, I hope that the 10th SDEWES conference will contribute to putting forth more best practices for these cities with your research, and the 10th SDEWES conference will be followed by many, many more SDEWES conferences. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I would like to open the floor for discussion, Şiir. Maybe we have some time for questions, so it might be interesting if there are any questions from the public. I have one question. One thing with indicators is it might be difficult to take care of different stages of development. For example, an undeveloped city will be more sustainable because people will use less energy, less resources, but in the end it will go to be less sustainable in time because people want development. It doesn't mean that less developed cities are actually always the ones that are more sustainable, because their wishes of their citizens are not necessarily sustainable. How do you catch this in the index?
Yes, this is a very important aspect. The different dimensions of the SDEWES Index tries to address this because, for example, a city that might have a low energy usage per capita might not have important resources for maybe a low education rate, low GDP per capita, low well-being, low research development and innovation capacity, and this is important to implement solutions for energy and CO2 saving measures. So, for example, it is important to look at all the dimensions, maybe one at a time. Yes, it is important, but all the dimensions at the same time. So this is where the aggregation comes into place, and looking at the cities which may stand out in one dimension, but it is important that they stand out in as many dimensions as possible.
Questions? Please, do we have a microphone? Please present yourself and put a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Hector Malano from the University of Melbourne, Australia. Thank you very much for your presentation. It's quite illuminating. Following from Professor Duić's comment, it seems to me that despite the fact that the index is quite useful as it is important to measure sustainability in terms of economic output, because ultimately it's economic output in different ways that is going to produce wealth. So, and it's a measure of efficiency of how much energy and other resources we use to produce that output. Would you consider in future relating these two aspects?
Measuring sustainability is quite valuable, and for the SDEWES Index, now we have a sample of 58 cities, but in the future we can increase it to even more cities, and I look forward to discussing with you how we can do this, and if you have any suggestions for including more cities. My city does have energy statistics. We can also, I would be more than glad to discuss with you further into how we can enlarge the SDEWES Index.
Yeah, I wasn't really alluding to more cities necessarily. It was alluding to connecting this sustainability aspect to the economic output of the system. How much gross national product, how much domestic product is being produced, given the amount of resources that are being used.
Yes, well, this is already reflected in the sixth dimension. For city planning and social welfare, it does look into the GDP per capita, but it is not the only indicator, because GDP per capita it may not be the only indicator to measure well-being and the economic input, so there are also different indicators to balance this aspect.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
We have another question, Professor Haas.
Reinhard Haas, Vienna University of Technology. Thank you very much for this really very impressive presentation. And I just have one question regarding this huge data set you must have collected. How did you manage to compile such a comprehensive, consistent and comparable data set on all these environmental issues? I know from some initiatives, and we also tried once just to compare different cities regarding their specific CO2 emissions. And if you really try to do it in a sound life cycle based way, it is, from my point of view, almost impossible. So I'm really very interested how you managed to do that.
Yes. The data sources include the European Environment Agency, the Covenant of Mayors Sustainable Energy Action Plans, and in those mechanisms, for example, the CEOPs, there are looking into is the data reliable, and if so, they are contacting the representatives from those cities. So taking into account the approved Sustainable Energy Action Plans, which do go through a monitoring process. For the other data, yes, this did include and involve a large data set. Now this is the third SDEWES conference, step by step, in which the city sample has been enlarged. But if you can imagine, there are 7 dimensions, 5 indicators in all dimensions, a total of 35 main indicators. There are also sub-indicators, close to 20. And did this involve a large data set? And for comparability, the main aspect was using data from the same source. So if you're collecting, for example, data on air quality, using a single source, single data set, and trying to unify the source as much as possible.
Well, SDEWES Center wants to continue developing this index, and as Professor Haas has said, it's a hell of a job to collect all this data. So we need your help. We need your help to come with more sources of data from your cities, and Şiir will try to improve the index as the time goes. But of course, using the available data can produce very valuable information, but this is a project in development, of course. We had another question, Professor Hammond. Oh, sorry, there was another question there, yes, please.
Okay. Simone Lefrank from the Northwest University, South Africa. I'm just wondering, did you take into account the footprint of the city? So where they get their energy source from, like South Africa exports most of its coal, and there's massive impacts on our environment. How does that, impact on the city where the coal is going to?
The cross-boundary interactions.
Yes.
I don't think it is that scientifically developed right now, and the data is not available. But in the future, if the data is available, of course it will be included.
Okay,
Branko Vučjak, Mechanical Engineering Faculty, Sarajevo, Bosnia and Herzegovina. My questions would relate to the valuation of indicators and the aggregation model of the different dimensions. From the numbers that you have shown, it's pretty visible that you did not measure the indicators, but most probably you classify them into 4 or 5 categories, something like that, or eventually you use a system of let's say, grading like in the schools.
Yes.
And that's quite probable. So my first question is, am I right? And the second question relates to the aggregation, because you have 7 different dimensions.
Yes.
And probably they have a different level of significance. So how did you approach the level of significance?
Yes.
Thank you.
So the method technology, the technique used was normalization. Each indicator, data was collected for each indicator, so they had units, megawatt hours, tons of CO2, and so forth. But to normalize all of this by indicator, it means that, for example, you can use the minimum and maximum method. This looks into the minimum value of the data set and the maximum value of the data set, and normalizes the data between that. So it is possible to free the data from the units with the normalization. And the aggregation was based on the summation of the normalized values in each dimension, and it's not equal weighting. It is, for example, 1.11 for some dimensions, 1.22 for the other dimensions, but it is aggregated.
Jeff Hammond, University of Bath, UK. Thank you very much. It's a very interesting idea. There are philosophical problems with looking at cities in isolation, because obviously no city can be sustainable.
Yes.
In the extreme, if you take the city of Vancouver in Canada, for example, it uses something like 200 times the resources it can produce. So all cities are dependent on their hinterland. So that raises the question, why look at cities? Mm-hmm. If we're looking at sustainability, shouldn't we be looking at the planet as a whole? We heard earlier about the one planet living. Mm-hmm. That is looking at the planet is a more appropriate scale if you're looking at sustainability than looking at individual cities.
Yes. Some of the indicators are looking specifically to the city and the city boundary, but on the other hand, there are indicators that look at the broader scope. For example, looking into the protected green spaces using a database it's called Protected Planet. It includes the area of each protected area and nature reserve, national park, Ramsar wetland areas. This broadens the scope outside the city, because this is also important. So, point well taken. Most of the indicators are focused specifically on the city, but there are also those indicators that try to enlarge the area with which the cities interact, and ultimately, of course, the global planet.
If I may add to this, of course, it is true what you said, and of course, there is no sustainable anything, but there is more sustainable and less sustainable.
Yes.
And what we think is that cities are a good laboratories for improving sustainability, because there are a lot of resources being used there, and there is a lot of scope for increased efficiencies by integration of various systems. It's more difficult to integrate various systems in hinterland because they are not concentrated. In cities we have water concentrated, we have energy use concentrated, heat, electricity, cold, transport, environment, everything is in one piece, in one small space. So if we manage to improve the sustainability of cities, we've done half of the job, but only half, of course.
Wojciech Budzianowski, Wrocław University, Poland. Thank you very much for your interesting speech. My short question is, how do you think, is it possible to convert this SDEWES index into evaluating companies?
Similar studies has been already done for ranking, for example, airports. There has been a sustainable airport index, and now airlines. So for companies, it is possible. It depends, of course, on the selection of dimensions. For example, the city planning dimension will not be relevant, but it is possible to conceptualize an index that will take into account the sustainability profile of the companies.
Okay, my name is Jürgen Hake. I'm from Germany. In this presentation, which I think is very inspiring, I miss a simple word, and this is governance.
Governance.
When you refer to your picture on the screen, you see we are talking about limited resources. And the major question is, if we can't expand the reservoir of resources, it becomes crucial how to manage these resources.
Mm-hmm.
And then we are in the field of governance.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, what do you think about governmental policies? How
Yes.
do you want to include this?
Yes.
What do you think about governance
Yes.
in general? And it also refers what previous speaker has mentioned about values and about ethical problems, how to distribute resources among cities or among people, and so on. I think this is a very, very important dimension,
Yes.
which is closely related to sustainable development.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Governance is a cross-cutting issue. So you have governance of energy systems. The Sustainable Energy Action Plans, they involve measures and follow-up measures. What are the actions being taken? That is one form of governance for the energy sector. Then there's governance for water quality, how you manage the resources, waste management. These are all forms of governance. And even I can say that, for example, it is spread out across all the dimensions. And one dimension in particular, and this is the last dimension for research development and innovation policy, because this is particularly based on scoring what is the governance of the energy policies, their priorities on energy and environment. Are these being followed up with calls, for example? And this particularly looks into the policy aspect for the city.
Are there any more questions? If not, I would like to thank very much Şiir. Thank you.
Thank you. And best wishes for the conference.
I would like to ask all those that are from the cities that Şiir has developed index for to talk to her and to see if she's missing some data that you might have. Or if you want to add your city to the index, or if you have access to data, please discuss with her. We want this index to grow in time. And we want it to become an authoritative index of cities' sustainability. We hope so. Our next speaker is Carlos Moedas, European Commissioner for Research, Innovation and Science. He was unable to join us here in person, but he has prepared a message for us. Do we have video? Here, okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry not to join you in the beautiful city of Dubrovnik today. Let me start by congratulating the conference organizers and you, the participants. This conference has brought together so many talented people over the years. Since 2002, well over 2,000 article submissions have been presented. 900 of those were published in leading journals. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry not to join you in the beautiful city of Dubrovnik today. Let me start by congratulating the conference organizers and you, the participants. This conference has brought together so many talented people over the years. Since 2002, well over 2,000 article submissions have been presented. 900 of those were published in leading journals. For years, you have contributed knowledge to the world, and this year's conference is no different. This year, many of you are from the Balkan region, demonstrating how this conference is an ideal forum to exchange ideas and meet researchers from all over our continent. You are all a great example of science diplomacy which requires openness and cooperation at all times. This is why we have designed our new funding program, Horizon 2020, to be open to the world, Researchers and research organizations from outside Europe are welcome to participate. Horizon 2020 is open to the world because in Europe we believe the best ideas come from very diverse groups, like exactly the one you are. So get to know each other and see what you can do together. As you know, water and energy are two of my 4 thematic priorities, along with food and health. Water and energy are also 2 of the topics you will be discussing a lot throughout the conference. 2 topics closely linked to global prosperity and well-being. With a commitment to spend 30 billion euro on climate-relevant research, Horizon 2020 has a growing portfolio of research and innovation in these areas. Our next work program for 2016 and 2017 will focus on energy, climate, and water in the circular economy through large-scale demonstration projects. So the future of European water, energy, and environmental research is bright, and I'm counting on you to make it even brighter. Thank you for many months and many years of hard work. I really wish you a productive and enjoyable conference. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sorry not to join you in the beautiful city of Dubrovnik today. Let me start by congratulating
Following Commissioner Moedas' message, Goran has prepared us a panel which will try to answer the following question. Can politics help scientific community to increase research and innovation potential of the regions? We need some time to prepare the panel, so we will start at 11 o'clock. Unfortunately, we don't have a coffee break, so you can stay here or just walk a little bit around. And as soon as we are ready, we will hopefully start. Thank you for participation in the opening session. Thank you.
Točno da vidim kako točno da vidim dimenziju. Goran, hoćeš registrirati ovaj sad ili još poslije? Sanjin 1, 2, 3 je šifra. S-A-N-J-I-N. Sanjin. Sanjin 1, 2, 3. Znaš što mene zanima, jer Duić nije ovo ovdje. Hrvoje, ti znaš Duić nije sad na panelu, jel da? Nije. Možeš maknuti, te stare možeš. Čekaj, koji su to? Ona je nova, ona je tamo. Ajde ti onda ove vode, čaše makni i ja ne pogledam s ove ljudi. Ima tu ispod čaša i ovo, ako nema konoga, tu ispod su.
Yes, I am. Yes, one moment.
Did you arrive alone or with family?
Alone.
Together with Brian.
Yeah. 1 second, please.
And Eva.
Okay.
No, I saw.
Which one?
If you take the latest change, date modifier.
Okay.
That's the only chance we have there. Then it should be, yes, this one.
Okay, excellent.
I sent it to Neven, but I should have sent it to you instead.
It's okay. We can manage everything. Thank you.
Brian, njega nema, Goran Krajačić, Piotr i Nevena ostavi, Neven ostaje isto ovdje, Dobrosaljevića makni. Znači Brian, Goran,
What? Why? What's this? No. Go away. I need to install this stuff. Change product key.
Osnovna stvar ima poslije, kad treba od jedne velike dvimar napraviti, tako?
Molim, je, tako je.
Sada nema ništa poslije.
I Goran, ili bez Gorana? To onda.
Fuck yes.
Čuj, kako je na svom laptopu da recimo kad dođem i priključim se na njega, jer ja imam nešto kad da diljem, kako da to misle, neku sesiju, jel imam još nekog posla, kako da...
Ne, sad ću vam sve objasniti, ne brinite. I ovo bi se trebalo sad pojaviti, bravo, dobro. Sorry, I'm talking.
No worry. What do we have to do?
We need to find other presenters. So right now I have Lund and Piotr Sviatek, and I need others. What are the names of the others?
I have no idea, my friend.
So he just sent you here without an idea? Jeriman,
Lund je keynote lecture, Lund nije član panela, znaš. Lund je keynote lecture.
doesn't go to the panel, he goes to the
But
keynote.
there is a timetable with the presenters.
I'm trying to find it. That's the problem.
And